Namaskara and welcome to our next session on yogic life. So, when you come under the Sharana of Paramapurusha, when you come under the Ashraya of Paramapurusha, then whatever sins that we have committed so far in this life and previous life, those sins are stolen by Paramapurusha. So, what do you mean by when you come under the Sharana of Paramapurusha? It means when you become a bhakta of Paramapurusha. When you become a bhakta of Paramapurusha, what happens is that he steals your papa karma. He steals your papa. So the reason why we are not able to cross the samsara sagara is because we have the samskaras, right, which fructify as papa and punya. So as long as we have samskaras, we are stuck in the samsara. So in order to cross the samsara sagara, the samskaras have to be stolen. And for that, what should a sadhaka do? Right? He needs to become a bhakta. So we say that Paramapurusha steals your papa karma. So generally speaking, stealing is a wrong thing, right? So stealing is a bad thing, is a bad karya. But we are saying that here Paramapurusha steals one thing, and he steals your papa karma. So when you ask somebody and when you take something, then that is not stealing. When you take it without asking somebody, if something belongs to some person, and if you take it without asking, then it is stealing. So Paramapurusha takes one thing from you without asking you, right? And what does he take from you without asking you? Is that he takes your papa karma. He takes all your papa karma without even asking you, right? So if you, as a sadhaka, if you look at your the baggage of karma that you have, and what you had before you were a sadhaka and what you have after your sadhaka, you will notice that the papa karma has reduced after you become a sadhaka. And the reason for that is because Harihi, who is papan harati, yaha papan harati, one who steals your papas, he is Harihi. Harihi is somebody who steals your papa karma. That is why he is called Harihi, right? So the papa karma, that the baggage that you have, become light, is because of the nasha of the samskaras. Because Paramapurusha has taken away your samskaras, therefore your mind has become now light. So whatever papa karma that you had, right, he does the haranam. He does the haranam nama, he takes away the papa karma. So why does he take away the papa karma? It's because if he doesn't take away the papa karma, then there is no way you can cross the samsara sagara. He wants all the jivas to cross the samsara sagara, right? So therefore he helps the bhaktas by taking away the papa karma. That is why his name is actually called as Hara, right? One who does the harana, one who takes away your papa karma. So generally speaking, stealing is bad, but here the stealing is with a good intention, is for your welfare, right? So such a stealing is not a bad thing. So we might have talked about in the past, there are three types of sadhakas. There are three types of sadhakas. One who is a pashu, and then one who is a veera, and one who is a deva. Right? These are the three types of sadhakas. So gradually a sadhaka progresses into these stages. So when you get your diksha and when you have started doing sadhana, then you are a pashu. Right? You are a pashu. Because janmana jayate shudraha. So by birth, all of us are pashu, because we are always thinking about, the basic things, the mundane things, mundane activities, like we want to thinking about the food, clothing, shelter, sleep, all those basic things that we are thinking. And even as we grow up, we are engrossed in this material world. We are so fully involved in this material world. That is all the swabhava of a pashu. Right? Getting involved in the stula vastu is the behavior of a pashu. So by birth, we are all pashu. Then what happens when you start learning sadhana, and when you learn that you have to fight against this prakriti, you have to fight against this stula swabhava, then you become a veera. Right? You're a veera, because you're fighting against all these evil propensities. Then you become a veera, and then slowly, by getting established in sadhana, you become a deva. Right? You become a deva. And then when you're established in this daivatvam, when you're established in this divya bhava, then you become that parama purusha itself. Right? So these are essentially, there are three stages: pashu, veera, and devatA. So in the nirguna avastha, parama purusha, he has nothing to do with this mundane world. Right? He is nirguna, doesn't have any gunas. So he is the supreme niyanta. He controls this whole world, but he doesn't involve in anything. So he is that Mahadev, right? So the one who is above everything, he is the controlling entity there. He is Devanam Devaha, Mahadev, right? So then the categorization of sadhaka into pashu, veera, and devatA, it is based on the mental situation or mental propensity of the sadhaka. So according to that, he establishes the contact with parama purusha. So when a sadhaka starts his sadhana, so he is at that point in time, he is like an animal, right? He is just like a janvar, right? So slowly, by doing sadhana, he raises above that pashutvam, right? He raises above that pashutvam. So that is why, we have talked about this shloka, sarve cha pashavah santi talavat bhutale naraha tesham jnanaprakashaya veerabhavah prakashitah veerabhavam sada prapya kramena devata bhavet. So what does it mean is that sarve cha pashavah santi. So in the beginning, everybody is an animal, right? So from the pashu, he becomes a manushya. That manushya is essentially that veerabhava. And then from that veerabhava, he becomes a devata, right? So somebody cannot become a devata just like that, right, without any effort. So only by sadhana that a human being raises. He raises from the pashutva into the manushyatva, and then from the manushyatva into the daivatva. So when he is in the pashu avastha, in the pashu situation, he is a sadharana. He is a sadharana manushya, right? He is in sadharana avastha, right? He is a new sadhaka, and he is like a pashu. So when he is like a pashu, in initial stages, the wrong propensities arise in the mind. So the sadhaka may think, oh, I have wrong propensities now, right? Am I actually a sadhaka, and why is it that I'm getting wrong propensities in my mind? There are wrong tendencies in my mind. But what needs to be understood is that this is not something to be ashamed of, right? Initially, as a sadhaka, because we are still a pashu, We have still not risen from that, we have not got above that level. So then these evil tendencies are there in the mind, and there is nothing to be afraid of. By continuously doing sadhana, slowly, the mind rises above that pashutva level, and it reaches the next level. Till it reaches the next level, these kind of evil tendencies will be there in the mind. It keeps arising then and there, because the mind is still at the pashutva. So that time, at that point in time, when he is in the pashutva level, he will tell to Paramapurusha, hey Paramapurusha, I am still a pashu, even though I am still a pashu, but I am still yours. You are my Swami, right? You are my Swami. And he does the samarpan to Paramapurusha. You are my father. You are the father of this pashu. And that sadhaka addresses Paramatma as Pashupati, right? In the first stage, sadhaka calls Paramapurusha as Pashupati because the sadhaka's mind is at the level of pashu. Then after that, when he starts doing sadhana, there arises a strength within him from Paramapurusha. That Shakti that he gets is the moral force, right? Is the moral force. What is that moral force? I am Pavitra, I am Shuddha, I am not a Papachari, I am not a Papi, right? So when he gets this moral force that I am Shuddha, I am Pavitra, I am not a Papi, then we call that sadhaka as a veera, right? Only by using a weapon somebody is not called a veera. Even when somebody gets that moral force within, right, then he becomes a veera. When he becomes a veera, then he also becomes a more tivra bhakta. He becomes a more sincere bhakta when he becomes a veera. He gets that moral force from Paramapurusha. So somebody who is not courageous, such a person can never become a bhakta, right? So somebody who is a veera, somebody who is courageous, only such a person can become a bhakta. Somebody who is a darpok, somebody who is, afraid all the time, he cannot become a bhakta. Only a veera can become a bhakta. A veera, what is a veera who is a sadhaka who is a veera? What does he tell to Paramapurusha? He tells Paramapurusha, hey Paramapurusha, I am a veera. My veerata is yours, right? My courage is yours. And you are my Veereshwara, right? Veereshwara. First he addressed Paramatma as Pashupati, and now he is calling him as a Veereshwara, because he is Veeranam Ishwara. He is the Lord of the Veeras, right? He is the Veereshwara, and this is the second stage. When the sadhaka does sadhana more and more, he gets another Shakti from Paramapurusha, right? First he got the moral force, and by which he became a Veera. By doing more and more sadhana, he gets this Adhyatmik Shakti. Adhyatmik Shakti, which is the spiritual force, right? Adhyatmik Shakti. When he gets this Adhyatmik Shakti, then he becomes a Deva. When the moral force is predominant, we call him as Veera. Naitik Shakti, we call him as Veera, right? When he has this crude force more, then we call him as a Pashu. When he has the Adhyatmik Shakti, then we call him as a Deva, right? That's what the shloka said, Kramena devatA bhavet, right? So he is a Manishya in the human body, and he becomes a Deva because of the Adhyatmik Shakti. In that case, he becomes even more Tivra Bhakta. He becomes even more sincere Bhakta. Or at that point in time, he tells to Paramapurusha, hey Paramapurusha, I am a devatA, and whatever that Daivi Shakti that I have is yours, is not mine, it's yours. And you are my Mahadev, Devanam Deva. I am a Deva and you are the Lord of all the Devas. So first, in the first stage, Paramatma was Pashupati. In the second stage, Paramatma was Veereshwara, and in the third stage, Paramatma was Mahadev. right? So that's why we say har har mahadev, right? So by taking his bhava, by taking his bhavana, what happens is, by taking the bhakti bhava of Paramapurusha, what happens is that we get rid of this maya, we get rid of this prakriti, the bandhana of the prakriti. So we get freedom from all types of bandhanas by taking the sharana of Paramatma, and getting rid of all these bandhanas is actually called as mukti or moksha, right? So tasya abhidhanat yojanat tatvabhavat bhuyashante vishwamaya nivritti. tasya abhidhanat abhidhanam means taking the dhavana of Paramapurusha. So there are two parts to that abhidhyana, right? That is pranidhana, Ishvara pranidhana, right? Ishvara pranidhana, Ishvara and pranidhana. What is pranidhana? So pranidhana means we have different vrittis in our mind, we have different tendencies in our mind. The mind goes in 10 different directions, right? All the different bhavanas that we have in a mind, to bring all the bhavanas to one point, right? Let the mind be apex, let the mind be pinnacle, bringing the mind to one point, right? And taking that one pointed mind towards Paramapurusha is called as Ishvara pranidhana. So mind, we know, is restless, it keeps running in different directions, but concentrating the mind and bringing the mind towards Paramapurusha, that is what is called sadhana, that is what is called Ishvara pranidhana. That is what we do in the first lesson of sadhana, right? So in the Shastras, mind is called as Dasharatha, right? Dasharatha. Why is mind called Dasharatha? Because the mind goes in the 10 different directions. That is why it is called as a Dasharatha, right? So the 10 different directions are the Purva, Paschima, Uttara, Dakshina, Urdhva, Adaha. These are called as Pradisha. And then Ishana, Vayu, Agni, Nairitya. These 4 are called Anidisha. Pradisha and Anudisha. These are the 10 directions. Purva, Paschima, Uttara, Dakshina, Urdhva, Adaha. Then Ishana, Vayu, Agni, Nairitya. So the Pradisha and Anudisha, these are the 10 different directions. So the mind is running in these 10 different directions.
Bhagini,
Ah,
the 10 directions, east, west, north, south. After that, Purva,
Paschima, Uttara, Dakshina, Urdhva, Adaha,
Urdhva,
then Ishana, Vayu, Agni, Nairitya. So all the different directions, northwest, northeast,
after
north.
Agni, after Agni,
Nairitya,
Naivedya. Okay, thank you.
So this mind is like a ratha, this mind is like a chariot, and it is having the indriyas are the 10 indriyas are the horses. So the mind is like a chariot, and the indriyas, the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas, they are like the horses. They are running in 10 different directions, right? That is why this mind is called Dasharatha, right? How does this mind get permanent happiness? It gets permanent happiness from Paramatma. So when the mind starts loving that Paramatma, then it starts getting permanent happiness, right? So what gives happiness to the mind? It is Paramapurusha. So what Dasharathasya Nandanaha kaha? Then Dasharatha is the mind. What gives happiness to the mind is Rama, is Paramapurusha, right? So the one the mind which is in the form of Dasharatha, Rama, Paramapurusha, gives happiness to that mind. So Rama is not somebody who is living in Ayodhya, but it is referring to Paramapurusha. He is the object of your ideation. Right? So when we do sadhana, we are doing sadhana of that Paramapurusha. So who is the object of our human ideation? It is Rama, Paramapurusha, Krishna. Right? So these all do not have an akara. They do not have a form. You cannot put a hand, leg and form a face to this. Right? This Paramatma is Nirakara. This Rama, this Paramapurusha, who is the object of your ideation, he is there in every action that we do, in every verb ending and case ending of life. Right? So whatever sentence that we make in our life, he is there in everything. So when we start ideating in everything that we do, that is how we get Paramapurusha. Right? So in Sanskrit there is actually a shloka, rAmaH Rajamanihi sada vijayate ramam ramesham bhaje. So rAmaH is pratama vibhakti, rAmaH, right? That is Paramapurusha. In dvitiya vibhakti, ramam, right? Ramam ramesham bhaje. Ramam is dvitiya vibhakti. Ramena abhihata nishachara chamu ramaya tasmai namaha raman nasti parajayam parataram ramasya dasosmyaham rame chittalayah sada bho rama mam uddhara. So what does it mean is that you can see in this, those who know Sanskrit can understand that the word Rama is used in all different vibhaktis, right? As a subject, as the object, as the instrument, right? In all the different vibhaktis, the word Rama is used. In all the activities that we do, Rama is there in all the activities that we do. So whatever the subject object may be, and whatever the activity that we do, he is there in everything. He is your object of ideation in each and every verb and each and every case, each and every noun form, right? So in the Pratama Vibhakti it is rAmaH, in Dvitiya Vibhakti it is Ramam in Sanskrit, right? This Pratama Vibhakti, Dvitiya Vibhakti, all that is in Sanskrit. Dvitiya Vibhakti Ramena, Chaturthi Vibhakti Ramaya, Panchami Vibhakti Ramat, Shashti Vibhakti Ramasya, Saptami Vibhakti Rame, Sambodhana Bho Rama. So these are all the vibhakti forms in Sanskrit. So if you don't know Sanskrit, it's okay, it's not. So what it means is these are all the noun forms, right? So whatever the noun form may be, he is the object of your ideation, right? So whatever work that we do, he is the object of your ideation. So any work that we do that so that Paramatma gets success. We are doing it for Paramatma. We are not doing for ourselves, right? Any work we do, we are doing for him. We are doing to please him. Let God be more effulgent in this universe by your action, right? So we are doing that action by which Paramatma's glory is magnified, right? So when we think about Paramapurusha, right? So Ramena abhihata nishachara chamu, right? Then there are Rakshasa, immoral force, right? So how do we escape from these immoral forces? By taking the Sharana of that Rama. By taking the Sharana of Paramapurusha, we escape from the immoral forces. There are lots of immoral forces in this world. Rakshasas, right? The so-called papis, the thieves, right? Those who are taking bribes, the hypocrites, right? How do we escape from all of those? From the Papa Shakti is by taking the Sharana of Paramapurusha. When you take the Sharana of Paramapurusha, the Papa Shakti gets destroyed, right? So this Ravana is the Papa Shakti. The mind is Dasharatha and the Papa Shakti is Ravana, right? What do you mean by Rama? Ravanasya Maranam, right? The death of Ravana. That is what is Rama. So the Papa Shakti which is there in the mind, the Ravana which is there in the mind, which is diverting the mind to all these different directions, right? Ravana means papa shakti. So by the 10 hands and the 10 heads, right? It is going in all the 10 different directions and doing the papa, right? So with the 10 heads, we are going in different directions and doing the papa. So that papa is the Ravana. Papa Shakti is Ravana. Ravana means Ashubha Shakti, immoral force. So by these immoral forces going in different directions, it pollutes the mind, degrades the mind. So what do you mean by achieving Paramapurusha? It is the death of Ravana. Right? By taking the ashraya of Paramapurusha, the Papa Shakti, Ravana dies. Right? But for the destruction of the Papa, what do we need to do? We need to take the Sharanagati of Paramapurusha. Right? So, Ramena Abhihata Nishachara Chamuhu. By taking the Sharana of Paramapurusha, all the Nishachara Chamuhu, all the Rakshasas, right, they get destroyed, they get killed. Right? Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. I do my namaskara to that Paramapurusha. Right? So when we say namaskara, we can say namaskara to everybody, to human beings and to Paramapurusha. We can say namaskara. But when we say namaste, is only to Paramapurusha. We can't address a human being as namaste. Right? Namaste, namaste Bhagini is the wrong usage. You can't say namaste. Namahate, namahate is only to Paramapurusha. The Chaturthi Vibhakti is only for Paramapurusha. So for Paramatma, we can also say namaskara. Namaskara you can say to everybody. But namaste you can say only to Paramapurusha. So Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. My namaskara to that Rama. Paramapurusha, to Paramapurusha I am doing namaskara. To Rama I am doing namaskara. To that Rama through whom the Ravana gets killed. Raman nasti parajayam parataram Ramasya daso smeham. Rama doesn't have any defeat. Rama cannot be defeated. Paramapurusha cannot be defeated. He is a Sarva Shaktiman. Right? And one more thing is, in front of Paramapurusha, the human beings get defeated. So when we get defeated in front of Paramapurusha, that is actually not the real defeat. Right? When we do the Sharanagati, so when we say we are doing Sharanagati, what does it mean that we are accepting defeat in front of Paramapurusha? It is not like that. It is not a real defeat. So it means that whatever we are doing for that entity. So that our defeat, let there be our defeat. Let I surrender my own astitva to that Paramapurusha. Right? I just offer everything to him. So it is really not a defeat. So in front of Rama, the defeat that you have is really not a defeat. Right? That is what is essential. So when you have Paramapurusha in your heart, right? Ramasya dasosmiham. I am a dasa. I am a servant. I am a sevaka of Paramapurusha. Right? So here dasaha means da dhatu in Sanskrit, the root verb dha means giving. So dasoham, by doing dasoham, you are giving yourself to that Paramatma. And when the da refers to you, when that is removed, then it becomes soham. I am that. When you are established in I am that, dasoham, when you are established in I am that, then you get established in Paramapurusha. Right? Rame Chittalayah Sada. the mind to which it gets attracted is it gets attracted towards that rama, towards that paramapurusha, right? So everything that is there in this universe is made of that rama. If that rama is with you, you get everything in this world. If that rama is with you, you get everything. There's nothing more to get. You've gotten everything, right? So if you keep that rama in your heart, then everything you got, sab ho gaya, right? Ramesh chittalayah sada. Keep that rama in your heart. Ho rama mam udhara, right? If you need to ask something to that rama, what should you ask? You should say udhara mam, right? Give me that mukti. Give me the mukti from the bandhanas. I'm your bhakta, right? I will always be your bhakta. I will always do your seva. Get udhara, liberate me. Hey Paramapurusha, liberate me. Need to have Rama in your heart and ask that Paramapurusha to liberate us. So that is what I want to talk today. So that in order to get that Adhyatmika Shakti, one needs to do sadhana. Without doing sadhana, you cannot get liberation. Okay? Now we can go to the Karapatram. So we were actually talking about Yama and Niyama. So I'd like to quickly summarize that Yama and Niyama. In that Yama and Niyama, we were talking about ahimsa. So we said that ahimsa is manovakkayahi para apidanam, right? Not causing pain to any being through thought, word or action, right? So the golden rule is that it is entirely based on motive or intention. There should be no intent to harm anybody, right? That is what is no himsa. So dogmatic ahimsa is actually flawed. Total physical non-injury is biologically impossible. Even if you have to breathe, breathing also kills microbes. Farming kills insects in the soil. Medicines kills bacteria. Rigidly avoiding action out of fear of sin is impractical and ruins society. So force versus non-violence, right? Ahimsa versus the use of force. Applying force to stop wrongdoers is not himsa if your motive is protection and justice, right? So if somebody comes to harm you and you take a weapon to protect yourself, that is not himsa, right? Using force against aggressors, atatai, right? Who is an atatai? Is one who sets fire to a property, poisons someone, attacks with a deadly weapon, steals wealth, takes away your land, abducts your spouse like Ravana. Those are all atatais, and we can use force against such atatai, right? So fighting an aggressor is valor. Refusing to fight out of fear or weakness is cowardice, not non-violence, right? We have examples like Sri Rama fighting against Ravana, Sri Krishna guiding Arjuna to war, right? So when we choose food, right, we have to choose such a kind of food which has lower expressions of consciousness. We have to choose plants over animals. And if we are in a situation where plants are not available due to the climatic conditions, if you are in Alaska or somewhere where vegetables are not available for some reason, and there is no other way that you can survive, and in that case, in extreme conditions, to survive, one may eat meat at that point in time, in extreme climatic necessity to preserve life. Otherwise, one has to choose food with lower expressions of consciousness. So a teacher or parent punishing a child for discipline or rectification is not himsa, because the motive is love and improvement, right? So do not fight blindly without assessing your strength, right? So like Rajputs, they just fought with courage without even assessing their strength. So know the strength of your opponent, right? Acquire the relevant resources and power, right, first, before you can fight, so that you can successfully defeat the evil, right? This is how much we have covered so far on the topic of ahimsa. Now we'll actually go forward. So the last paragraph on ahimsa, let's read that. Pushpalata Bhagini, do you want to take it?
Bhagini.
Yeah.
Last paragraph of ahimsa, I must take.
Yeah, the use of force. Can you keep a screen?
The use of force against an aggressor is valor, and desisting from such use of force is cowardice. But the weak people must assess their strength before indulging in violent conflict with a powerful aggressor. Otherwise, if a fight is started without acquiring proper strength, injustice may temporarily triumph. In history, such an error has been called Rajput folly. The Rajputs always went forward with courage to resist Mughal invasion. No doubt they fought valiantly, but they faced the enemy without assessing their own strength. They suffered from intrigues and internal decisions, and hence they always lost battles and died a heroic death. It is therefore necessary to acquire adequate strength before declaring a war against an aggressor. To pardon aggressors before correcting their nature means encouraging injustice. Of course, if you find that the aggressor is bent on destroying you, whether you use force or not, it would be proper to die, at least giving a blow to the best of your might, without waiting to assemble the adequate forces. So, the last paragraph essentially says that using force against aggressor is not himsa, but you must assess your strength before facing the enemies. Otherwise, you shouldn't use force against them. This, and also pardoning the aggressor is also cowardice. So a best example is the Rajputs, who always fought the Mughals, but they, without assessing their strength, and they fought a heroic battle, and they couldn't invade the Mughal, they couldn't resist the Mughal invasion because of their less strength, but they died a heroic death. So to pardon an aggressor is also cowardice. Suppose we don't get adequate force to face the aggressor, it is better to die a heroic death, but not before giving the aggressor a mighty blow, and then to succumb to the aggressor. That would be a great thing. That's what is said in the paragraph, in the last paragraph.
Yes, Bhagini, nicely said. So that was really good. So once we have adequately understood what ahimsa means, what it stands for, and we have looked at a lot of different scenarios and examples in daily life as well as in the collective life, right, what ahimsa means. So the fundamental principle is manovakkayahi sarvabhutanam apidanam ahimsa, right? So not harming anybody by thought, word or deed is ahimsa. So the importance of intentionality is very important. We talked about the importance of right to exist, which every jiva has, right? So without killing something, no jiva can live, right? When a lion kills its prey, it's only doing so in order to, exist. So the lion cannot be blamed for that, right? And that is not an example of himsa. So the animals and plants work according to their sahajata vritti, but in the case of human beings, we have a free will, right? We should understand that for our existence, everything we do involves the death of microorganisms, right? We've discussed all these examples. So just to exist involves the death of others and harm of other living beings, and that is not himsa, right? And using the force against aggression is also not himsa. We have a right to use the force when injustice is being perpetrated against others, right? And it is not something that in spiritual life we cannot use force. This is a misconception that people have, that people who are spiritually oriented should refrain from engaging in the society. That is not the case. Rather, it is the opposite. Those who are sadhakas, they are moralists, right? So as I've been telling you, when you become a sadhaka, you get the viira bhava, you get the moral force, right? So spirituality is intimately connected with one's link with Paramapurusha. Ultimately, my actions should please that supreme entity, and one should be established in that approach, right? So when one is wanting to please, that is dedicated to pleasing that supreme entity, then they cannot act immorally, no matter what the situation may be, right? A true sadhaka cannot go against morality. They have no interest in doing that, right? So the intention actually plays a very important role over here, right? What is your intent when you're doing the action? Your intent is to harm somebody, or your intent is survival, right? So that is what we've talked. So when you are forced to use force against an aggressor, we have to make sure that we have adequate strength, right? Without assessing your strength, and if you go and engage in a battle, then you will foolishly get killed. So when you are using the force, you have to also use your viveka. Do I have the necessary strength to fight this person, right? Just because they're saying use force doesn't mean you can just go and stand in front of somebody who is very strong, right? So you need to assess your strength and then engage in a battle, right? So these are all the various points that we covered on ahimsa. Essentially, at the end of the day, there are so many misconceptions about the usage of the term ahimsa. We've understood all those misconceptions, and what is the right usage of ahimsa also we have understood. So that is the first point on yama, ahimsa. The second one is satya. There is a Sanskrit shloka which I will read. Parahitartam vang manaso yatartha tattvam satyam, right? Parahitartam vang manaso yatartha tattvam satyam. So we'll read that. Shubham Bhagini, do you want to take that? Satyam implies.
Yes, Bhagini. Satya implies proper action of mind and the right use of words with the spirit of welfare. It has no English synonym. The word true truth would be translated in Sanskrita as rata, to state the fact. The sadhaka is not asked to follow the path of rata, one is to practice satya. The practical side of satya is dependent on relativity, but it finally lies in Parampusha, the supreme spiritual entity. That is why Brahma is often referred to as the essence of satya. Satya means that we use our mind properly, and we use the right words for welfare. it doesn't mean the it has no English meaning. The word true or truth, if we translate in Sanskrit, then it will be rata, and rata means the state of fact. But one sadhaka is not allowed to follow the path of rata. Instead, the sadhaka should follow satya, because satya is more practical and dependent on relativity, and lies in from Brahma. And the rata instead is a fact, not not for welfare of the uh, may or may not be in welfare, but satya is always in the welfare side. So we are asked to follow the path of satya instead of rata. And because from Brahma lies in satya, and that is why Brahma is often referred to as the essence of satya, and Brahma is also called essence of satya.
Yes, Vagini, nicely said. So parahitartam vangmanasoho yatartha tattvam satyam. Parahitam means welfare of somebody. Welfare of somebody. So your any action that you do, any action of the mind, anything that we think, and when we speak, right, we have to do that with the spirit of welfare, right? So there is a difference between Rita and Satya. Rita, the difference between Rita and Satya is clarified further with examples. People think of Satya as referring to the fact, right? Stating the fact as it happened is Satya, right? But the point here is that we should speak with the spirit of welfare. So whatever requires to be said should be said for the spirit of welfare. If what we speak with the spirit of welfare, if it coincides with the fact, then the fact should be stated. In that case, the Rita and Satya will be the same, right? Sometimes what happens, even though the fact is something, but we have to state something else because somebody's welfare is in that, then we will follow Satya. We will deviate from the fact and state Satya, which is in the welfare of somebody, right? So if something is a fact, if something is a Rita, but it is not in the welfare of somebody, then it should not be stated. The fact should not be stated. So we will actually go into different examples here. Most of the time Satya and Rita coincides, right? Rita and Satya are the same, but one should be very alert and aware and compassionate, right? And one has to be a proper sadhaka linked with Paramapurusha, right? So in other words, following Satya is not easy. If one is not properly established in moral life and yogic life, then it becomes easy to abuse this principle for self-interest and justify one's wrong actions on the basis that it was done in the spirit of welfare, and justify all kinds of lying, right? So this is also not proper. So this depends on pure heart, pure mind, somebody who is linked with Paramatma. Only then we can open the door for somebody not to be speaking the fact all the time. Otherwise, the simple morality for somebody who is not established in spiritual life is better because it's clear cut, right? One should speak the fact. So so sometimes it becomes better to speak the fact than to get engaged in all twisted approaches, which is ultimately serving your own self, right? That is not right. But if somebody is really understanding the spirit of parahitam, right? Parahitam, if somebody is really speaking for parahitam, then most of the time they're going to speak the fact because it coincides with kalyana. And in rare exceptions, when it does not, then also be ready to do that, knowing that it is kalyana, for the kalyana that they're doing, not for self-interest. So this is a very, very deep point. It requires dedication in spiritual life. It is not all that complicated. But when people are guided by self-interest, then it becomes a dangerous point. It opens doors for all kinds of misbehavior, right? So to understand what is Satya and Rita, it requires deep understanding to properly utilize it. And it is ultimately a relative experience, right? It is a relative experience. Depending on the situation, we have to decide whether we have to use Satya or Rita, right? In most situations, Satya and Rita will coincide. In rare exceptions, it will not coincide. In that situation, we have to use the Satya, which is for the welfare of somebody and not Rita. Right? Satya, Paramapurusha is called as Satya, right? His Parabrahma is called as Satya, right? Because Paramapurusha is Sarvajana Kalyanakari. He takes into account the welfare of everybody, no exception, right? And when we speak Satya, it is for the welfare of somebody. That is why the finality lies in Parabrahma, right? That is why Brahma is often referred to as the essence of Satya. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Paramatma, the Brahma, is called Satyam, is called Jnanam Anantam. Right? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Okay. So he is called as Satchidananda. Satchidananda. Sat is Satyam. Okay. We can actually go to the next thing. Bhagini, Pushpalata Bhagini.
Shall I read?
Yeah, yes, please.
Satyam Jnana Mananta Brahma. Even though the objective of a sadhaka is to achieve the ultimate entity, in the process, sadhakas have to deal with the relativity of their surroundings. Humans are rational beings. They possess in varying degrees the capability to do what is necessary or good for humanity. In the realm of spirituality, such thought, word or action has been defined as Satya. So now the objective of a sadhaka is to achieve the ultimate entity. But in this process, the sadhakas also deal with the relativity of their surroundings. So humans are rational beings. So they have varying capabilities to do what is necessary or good for humanity. So, but for achieving spirituality, such thought, word or action has been defined as Satya. That is in final spirituality, actually. That's what is said in the paragraph.
Yeah, Bhagini, nicely said. So on one hand, the goal is to become one with Paramapurusha. That is the goal of human life. That is the goal of yoga. And that is the meaning of yoga. But in the meantime, we have the complexity and the nuanced relativity of living in this world. And this is the path, as we have already gone through the Shrishti Chakra. We have to get from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So that requires living in this world. So it requires Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit. So we do sadhana for Atma Moksha and we do Jagat Hit, service to the humanity, right? To remove the malas of the mind, to remove the doshas of the mind. So there are various complexities involved in this nuances. So at the time of learning sadhana, one has to commit to a readiness to follow yama and niyama. So actually, on one hand, that is a prerequisite for learning sadhana, that one is ready to commit to following yama and niyama. At the same time, after one begins doing sadhana, right, so they get more established in yama and niyama. So the process of following yogic life, yoganishta jivanam, and in particularly doing sadhana makes one's understanding of the points of yama and niyama and one's ability to follow them more deeply. They become established, right? So it's said over here that humans possess in varying degrees the capability to do what is necessary or good for humanity. So following yama and niyama requires deep understanding, and people are not all the same in the degree of understanding, but before whatever, when we're starting to learn sadhana, we don't have complete understanding of the yama and niyama, but by doing sadhana we get more established, we get the commitment to follow yama and niyama. When we start doing more and more sadhana, we become established in spiritual life, then one's ability to follow yama and niyama also increases. As the mind becomes more and more deeply linked with Paramatma, then one's understanding, one's capability of following yama and niyama also increases. Right? We're talking about parahitartham vang manasoho yatartha tattvam. So what is parahita? So parahita is not equally understood by all of them. With sincere mind we try to understand that every day we will follow satya and we'll get more deeply established in that. So in the role of spirituality, such thought or action as will be for the welfare of all, that is satya, right? So parahitam vak manas, parahitam vak manas. So it is having the welfare of others in your thought and speech, right? So here it doesn't talk about the action, it talks about the action of the mind. Every action that we take is preceded by a thought process which ultimately leads to that action, right? With exceptions such as when one touches a hot pot, right, then even before one has an opportunity to think, right, we have it embedded in the nervous system that the hand will automatically drift apart, right? Then after that you realize that the pot was hot and that is why my hand drifted back, right? So there are certain reflexes like that. In contrast to animals who are not responsible for their actions, everything that they do is according to their sahajata vritti, as guided by prakriti. Human beings, every action we take is preceded by a thought that they decided to do that action. That is why it is said over here, proper action of the mind and the right use of words. Vang manaso. Manas is the mind, right? So when we are confronted with a particular situation, we have to consider the various aspects of the situation, consider what the action is, what words will be for the welfare of all, and only then we should speak in that direction. Our words should be reflective of our thoughts, right? So that is the sense of it, that every action we do, including the words we speak, is preceded by thought process which leads to that. So that mental process should be informed by a desire to take such actions and to speak such sentences as will be beneficial to everybody around, right? So that is why it's said the action of the mind and the right use of the words. Okay, that is what is satya. Okay, shall we go to the next paragraph, Bhagini? Shubham Bhagini, Subrajyoti Bhagini.
Yes. For example, a person.
One second, Bhagini. Sorry, you have to put your the Subrajyoti Bhagini as your name the next time.
Okay, sure, Bhagini.
Okay, yeah.
For example, a person rushes to you for shelter. You don't know whether he is guilty or not, or perhaps you know for certain that he is not guilty. He is followed by a ruffian band on torturing him. If this terrified man seeks refuge in your house, and then ruffian comes and asks you regarding his whereabouts, what should you do? By adhering to rata or truth, you would inform the ruffian of his whereabouts. Then, if he is murdered, will you not be responsible for this murder? Your mistake may have resulted in the murder of an innocent person. By adhering to rata or truth, you become indirectly guilty of this heinous crime. What about be your duty if you follow the correct interpretation of Satya? It would be not to reveal the whereabouts of the person and rather to misguide the aggressor so that the refugee may safely return home. Here, here one example is given for understanding of Rata and truth. If some person takes shelter to our house and we know that he is innocent, and some ruffian band or some bully people ask where is he, then we cannot just tell them his location. We should instead misguide the bullies. So otherwise the murder of innocent person can happen. So if we adhere to rata, then we can become a criminal too. But if we misguide and we save that innocent person, then it will be truth, and we must adhere to truth instead of rata.
Truth here means we have to adhere to satya. That is what satya. Here in this situation, there is a difference between the satya and the rita. Right? Through this example, what we can understand is that when dealing with people who are simple, straightforward, and speaking the fact, then although not 100% of the time, but vast majority of time, the way to welfare is to speak the truth with them. Which means to speak the fact with them. In very rare circumstances, it may not be the case. Right? So here, if this terrified man seeks refuge in a house, and then that ruffian follows and comes and asks you, is that other person there in your house? Right? So that other person is there in your house. That is the fact. That is the rita. If that ruffian asks you, if that other person is there in your house, and if you say yes, that is rita, you're saying rita, then by that what happens? The ruffian will find that person and kill him. Then you will be responsible for his murder. Right? In this situation, instead of adhering to rita, if you follow satya, then that welfare of that person who is hiding in your house the welfare will be maintained. If you tell to the ruffian that person is not there in your house. So in this case, you're telling satya, which is different from rita. Rita is that this person is there in your house, and satya, the welfare of that person who is hiding in your house will be, if I say that this person is not there in the house, so that the ruffian can go away. Right? So that this person who's hiding, who's taken your shelter, can go home safely. So in this situation, in this rare situation, what will you do? Will you say the rita, that this person is hiding in your house and have him killed? Or will you say satya, that this person is not there in your house and have him saved? Right? The welfare of the person who is hiding in your house is by telling satya. Right? So the welfare is an important thing that we have to take into account. Right? These are not common circumstances. 99% of the time, rita and satya coincide, right? Majority of the time. But in rare circumstances, they do not coincide. Then it is important to understand the difference and what the proper pathway should be. Right? We need to follow satya in that circumstance. Okay, we'll just take one more paragraph. Bhagini. Vishwalata Bhagini.
Suppose your mother is taking food, a letter is received about the death of your maternal grandfather. If mother inquires about the contents of this letter, what reply will you give? If you adhere to truth, you will reveal the news of her father's death, which will cause a great shock to her mind, and she would not be even able to take her food. It would be preferable in this case to state that all is well in the family. After your mother has had her food, a mention of her father's illness would prepare the ground for her to bear the news of the tragedy. In this way, even though something other than the truth was uttered, the dignity of Satya has been maintained. So this paragraph also gives the difference between truth and Satya. Rata and Satya. Actually, if the mother is taking food and news has come about the death of her father, it is better to tell her after she takes her food, just not to reveal the entire this one, that he is ill first, and then prepare her to receive the news of tragedy. So in this way, the dignity of Satya is maintained, even though the truth has not been uttered immediately. This is what the paragraph says.
Yeah, this is another example. Right? This is another example. Nicely said, Bhagini. So this is another example of Satya. Right? So your mother is actually taking food and you get this news about the passing away of the maternal grandfather. And if you tell the mother who is having food that, her grandfather died, then in a great shock, she may not eat. Right? So in that situation, what would you do? You would wait for your mother to have finished her food. And then at that point in time when she's having the food, and if your mother asks what is there in the letter, you would not tell her immediately that it is her father who has died, not the grandfather, her father who has died. So in that situation, you would say something else, and so that your mother finishes the food, and then after that, when she is somewhat calm, and then slowly you will divulge the fact to her, right? So that your mother gets an opportunity to eat the food, get the proper nutrition, and then gradually the news can be presented to her in a way that will become, it will be more, in a way that it will be easier to deal with. Right? Here we saw two different examples. The first one is where you're dealing with a person who is a ruffian, and the second one where you have, some news which is broken immediately might be harmful. Right? So in these two examples, you can see that there is a difference between the Satya and Rita. Right? So Satya is the proper use of thought and word. We can see that how you're using the thought and the word, right? You're thinking and how you're presenting it. Use it in the welfare of somebody, right? You cannot just present it right away because I want to say the fact, I want to say the truth, and say that, I want to present it as it is, then it may be harmful to somebody. right? If you present the truth as it is to mother, the mother may even die of shock, right? If the father was hale and healthy and suddenly he passed away, if you break the news right away, then even the mother might just die of shock, right? So when you're stating something, you have to take into consideration the hita, parahita. Is this for the welfare of the other person or not? If it is not for the welfare of the other person, then you have to think carefully and present in a way that it is not harming the other person, right? In that situation, we might have to deviate from rita, right? That is what we need to understand, the difference between rita and satya. Okay, any questions so far? The difference between rita and satya is clear to you all?
Clear.
Okay, very good. So we will stop over here and we'll take the third point on yama asteya from the next class. Okay.
Bhagini,
Namaste.
that one shloka you said on Ramana with 7 vibhaktis, that alone you sent it.
I will send it on the WhatsApp.
Yes.
Okay.
Dhanyavada.
Yeah. Dhanyavadah. Namaskaram.
Namaskara.